A couple weeks ago, there were a few viral videos. One showed activists cheering that a law was passed allowing illegal immigrants to get driver's license. The next video showed a bunch of illegal immigrants lining up to get driver's licenses. Well, now we have another update here. Homeland Security Chief orders review of state laws allowing driver's license for illegal aliens. One of the biggest concerns that conservatives have is that by placing these illegal immigrants on the DMV list, many will inadvertently end up on voter rolls and might accidentally end up voting illegally. And that's actually happened in the past. It's not particularly widespread, but NPR covered the story February 26. Some non-citizens do wind up registered to vote, but usually not on purpose. Well, now there is growing concern that all of these illegal immigrants are going to be applying for driver's licenses. This will result in, illegal votes. Now, I want to read you the story about what's going on with the DHS, but there's a few points that there's a point I should make, before starting. First, I think it's there's two things I want to say. The first is a fair criticism. By having illegal immigrants acquire driver's licenses, that means public services, public funding is now going towards people who may or may not be paying taxes or may be working under the table. It's very likely many of these people are working under the table, though there is a bigger argument from the left and the right as to whether or not they do or don't. I think it's fair to say public services should not be used on people to an extent who are not citizens. Granted, there are some services that must go to non-citizens. If you're a tourist, you still have constitutional rights. I'm not saying we just say, hey, you're not a citizen for any reason. No, I'm saying people enter the country illegally. We have to be careful that if we're spending public funds, it's not going to be a drain on those who are actually spending that money. Actually, let me just read the story because I'll save the points afterwards. I don't want to bury the lead on you guys. We'll see what DHS has to say, and then I want to talk about illegal voting and some concerns that are there. Daily Caller reports Chad Wolf, the acting secretary of the Department of Homeland Security, ordered a review of states that allow illegal aliens to obtain driver's licenses and restrict data sharing with federal immigration authorities. Wolf on Tuesday ordered all of the components of DHS to conduct a department-wide review of the state laws to determine how they affect their day-to-day operations, according to a memo obtained by the Daily Caller News Foundation. The DHS chief directive indicates that he is prepared to take aim against state laws. Quote, accordingly, I am instructing each operational component to conduct an assessment of the impact of these laws so that the department is prepared to deal with and counter these impacts as we protect the homeland, Wolf's memo read. The memo follows implementation of New York's Green Light Law and passage of a similar bill in New Jersey in December. Both laws not only allow illegal aliens to obtain driver's licenses, but also restrict DMV data from Immigration and Customs Enforcement and other agencies within the Department of Homeland Security. In New York in particular, numerous county clerks have expressed reservation over the fact that illegal aliens can obtain a driver's license with foreign documentation, arguing that such a policy paves the way for voter fraud, identity theft, and even terrorism. DHS has already voiced its opposition to a provision in the New York law that prohibits Homeland Security investigations, a division of ICE, from accessing DMV information, even if the agency is investigating a serious crime. At a certain point, the federal government needs to supersede state and city law, I'd imagine. If you start having states, again, let me just point out, I've never been a big states' rights guy. I've always been kind of the liberal, leaning more towards more moderate, not super libertarian, liberal, meaning I think the government should regulate this stuff. If California says you can come here and get free health care, which they've done for people under 26, you're now providing taxpayer funds to people who can show up with foreign documentation. People can come to New York with a document that can't be verified because we don't have the resources to prove if whatever country they came from, it's a legit document. Now we're using taxpayer funds for illegal immigrants. I understand there's a lot of arguments about the benefits of this, being better able to track some of these illegal immigrants, fine. And the argument there is they're not going to provide the information to DHS. Now you have, you're creating security exploits and holes in the American system. And that's going to be ultimately bad across the board. I don't think the benefits outweigh the detriment. But I got this quote here. I want to read it, but I want to make that point. I wanted to make sure I got you the news about what they were saying first. And I'll make this other point. I constantly hear from Democrats that it's racist to implement voter ID laws. And this is a point brought up by a lot of conservatives when this video went viral showing all these illegal immigrants lining up to get driver's licenses. There's a very, very famous video. Apparently, look, as somebody who does research and studies this stuff, I know about the comments made on the right and the left, but too many left-wing journalists don't watch this stuff. Ami Horowitz, okay, he's a conservative guy, it's my understanding. He's appeared on Fox News. He went around and asked students, I think it was at Berkeley, or he just asked college students if voter ID was racist, and they said it was, and they gave extremely racist answers as to why this is. I get it, it's an anecdote, it's edited, we don't have like statistical data. The fact is, one of the biggest narratives from the left about voter ID is that particularly the poor and black communities, they don't know where the DMV is, they can't afford to get a license, it will, disenfranchise them and make it so they don't want to vote. But that's kind of a bad argument when you then have illegal immigrants, people who aren't even from this country, lining up to get a driver's license. I'm sorry, you can't reconcile the fact that people who live in America, you can't claim they don't know where the DMV is or can't afford it, and then simultaneously claim the poor illegal immigrants who haven't even been here that long know where the DMV is and can get a driver's license. We've got a paradox here. If you're not going to require a driver's an ID to vote, but you are going to give people licenses which can inadvertently put them on voter rolls, we got a bit of a weird, paradoxical position by many of the Democrats. I'm not entirely convinced voter ID is necessary, like the conservatives would be. And the reason is I can show you the Heritage Foundation data showing that proven instances of voter fraud, 1,241. There's been 1,071 criminal convictions and civil penalties. I understand that just because we can, we've proven these doesn't mean that's all of them. There's probably likely many, many more. But unfortunately, for the right, there isn't evidence of massive widespread voter fraud. However, being the moderate that I am, I still think it makes sense to, not put people on voter rolls, make sure it doesn't happen. And I do agree with cleaning voter rolls, especially when you see people who are deceased voting. You can't just have, look, man, the left wants to ignore a lot of this data. And I do see a lot of conservatives, Trump was tweeting about, potentially 3 million illegal immigrants voting. I don't see the data for that. Sure, you can believe it's an issue. And if you do, I think it's important that we actually investigate. But the Heritage Foundation is a bit conservative. That's my understanding. They're conservatives. And they're saying they've got 1,241 proven instances. Great. Prosecute them, penalize these individuals. There was one woman who was a legal resident in Texas who voted because she got a voter card and she didn't know she couldn't vote. She cast an illegal vote and she got in trouble for it. I think she's facing prison time. That's a little bit harsh, right? Purge her vote from the system. We should have election security. I think, I'm going to have to say it, man. And this is what really, bothers me about the whole arguments. So the left is just wrong on this one. They're just plainly wrong. Like I said, man, you can't simultaneously claim that it's unfair to have voter ID laws, but then actually implement ID laws to give illegal immigrants IDs, and then we can see them showing up to get them. If you think people, it's one of the most racist things I've ever heard, that you have these white progressives claiming black people don't know how to get IDs. I'm sorry, that's just not the case. And that's what we saw from the Ami Horowitz video. I get it, it's anecdotal, it's not statistical evidence. But until someone wants to provide some evidence, to the contrary, we have a serious conundrum. You can't refute the argument from conservatives that it makes no sense. You need an ID to buy cigarettes and beer and even go to a movie if you look like you're younger than 17, but not to vote. Now that to me is just straight up odd. You add in the fact that now you're going to have illegal immigrants getting these IDs, getting driver's licenses, and the fact that, yes, even NPR said this is a problem, you are opening the door to more exploitation, and it's only fanning the flames of the conservative argument. So there absolutely should be something done about it. Well, let's go on, because I want to make sure I read this quote from DHS. They say, laws like New York's green light laws have dangerous consequences that have far reaches beyond the DMV. DHS spokeswoman Heather Swift said Tuesday, these types of laws make it easier for terrorists and criminals to obtain fraudulent documents and also prevent DHS investigators from accessing important records that help take down disgusting things, and human trafficking rings and combat everything from terrorism to drug smuggling. A total of 14 states allow illegal aliens to obtain driver's licenses in the U.S. Wolf's memo ordered DHS agencies to assess the following. What DMV information is currently available and how is it accessed? How is the DMV information used in day-to-day operations? What are the security consequences and long-term impacts if information is limited? The memo also directs agencies to seek solutions for any security consequence that arise from the state laws. Quote, never before in our history have we seen politicians make such rash and dangerous decisions to end all communication and cooperation with the Department of Homeland Security, law enforcement. The Secretary is prepared to take every measure necessary to ensure the safety and security of the homeland, and we look forward to the recommendations of our agents and officers in the field. I am now going to make a seemingly non sequitur leap to gun control. Being from Chicago, I've heard many a left-wing argument about the problems of all of these different state laws. And let me tell you, in Chicago, many people drive to Indiana, where it's very easy to purchase a firearm, bring it illegally into Chicago, and then sell it, in the black market. Many people on the left point out the disparity between the states, and these different laws. And they make an argument that we need nationwide background checks to prevent these kinds of things from happening. Well, I'll tell you this. I'm not trying to make a gun control argument. I'm going to make a point about state control and these laws. But in terms of the gun control stuff, I think it's kind of a fair argument. Now, the concern from conservatives has to do with, red flag laws, just showing up at someone's house and seizing the weapon and causing all sorts of chaos. But it is true that people travel across state lines to buy a gun in an easier place, or someone from Indiana can much more easily buy a weapon and bring it to Chicago. The point I'm making is the left is arguing that we need national laws to ensure our safety. At the same time, each individual state seems to be enacting laws to disregard the federal law. Herein lies the big conundrum with the left's argument. If you're going to argue that we should have national laws for gun control, and the right is going to argue that we have national laws for immigration, but you are then going to support states basically passing laws saying we will not follow federal law, what's to stop any state from saying we wouldn't follow federal law on gun control? You see the paradox here? I actually happen to think national standards for gun control would make sense. I think the right to bear arms shall not be infringed. I think the Constitution is clear about that. But I do think there are certain low-level things we can do. I understand it is a very, very complicated argument, but let me just say there are speech regulations, okay? There are certain things you can't say. You can't incite violence. So I think it's fair to have some kind of gun control legislation. Again, not trying to turn this video into a gun control thing. I'm trying to point out the seeming double standards I see with the left argument. Conservatives argue against, these background checks for different reasons because of red flag laws. And there have been many circumstances where people, the cops have shown up and it's gotten violent and it's been lethal. It's unfortunate. But the left is simultaneously arguing for and against federal control. You can't do that, okay? And I want to make sure it's clear. Both sides have their faults on this one, okay? It is true you will put non-citizens on voter rolls. It is true that because of this, some people have accidentally voted. Think about that little old lady, legal resident, didn't know she couldn't vote. She got the voter card, she voted, now she's going to go to prison, okay? That's on you, left. You're pushing these laws. I also want to point out, man, I'll tell you what. Go and tell the average American that we're going to take some of your tax money and give it to non-citizens because we're giving them driver's licenses. You're going to find a lot of people saying, wait, what? Okay, we can barely afford the programs we have now. The national debt is spiking. We got quantitative easing. We got the government, listen, man, I'm not going to get into the economy stuff, but the point is, there's a limit to how much labor and energy can be spent where we're going to start seeing rapid inflation. So listen, I'll throw it to the right and say, it's not as widespread as you think it is. This is the Heritage Foundation. We've seen the thousands. I'll leave it at that. But I do think it's hypocritical of the left to claim voter ID is racist or something, but then simultaneously implement IDs for people who aren't even citizens. That's complete inversion, and all you're doing is fueling the conservative argument. Dare I say, by pushing for this law while simultaneously maintaining the argument that it's racist, you have just opened the door for an investigation into, voter fraud. If we know from NPR that non-citizens vote, and you just offered up licenses to non-citizens, don't be surprised when DHS comes a-knocking and the FEC comes a-knocking and we start doing investigations into the voter rolls, and don't be surprised if this results in a larger targeting of the voter rolls. The left tries to claim the Republicans cheat by purging poor people and people in the black community from voter rolls. It absolutely does happen, but I'll tell you this. For one, the right is arguing the left cheats by putting non-citizens and deceased people on voter rolls and allowing them to vote. So they want to purge. We do voter roll cleanups. This is a normal thing. The left, accuses the right of wrongdoing, but I will tell you this. Regardless of who you think is right or wrong, in the end, if you give driver's license to non-citizens, and even NPR is willing to admit that puts them on voter rolls, you will not have an argument against conservatives wanting to clean the voter rolls and investigate them. I hope that's clear. DHS is going to be looking into it. We'll see what happens. I think nothing. I'll tell you this. New York is going to allow non-citizens to come and do their thing. And then the point I was making with the gun control stuff, If they can come into California and you won't do anything about it, you won't track them, and ICE can't get information, they can then go anywhere in the country because we don't have checkpoints between each state. And therein lies one of the big problems. Security exploits. I'll leave it there, man. I think you get the point. Stick around. Next segment's coming up at 4 p.m. at youtube.com/timcast, my main channel. Happy New Year. We're getting started. It's a slow roll. You know, everybody's still hungover. So I will see you at 4 p.m. youtube.com/timcast.